Hi guys, welcome. Welcome to Value Invest Asia Facebook Live. This is our June edition, and we are very honored today that we have with us Mr. Keith Chu from Boustead Singapore and Boustead Projects. Keith is actually now the Senior VP for Corporate Marketing and Investor Relationship at Boustead Singapore. And today we are very happy for him to come and chat more with us about what's going on with Boustead Singapore and Boustead Project. Interestingly, I met Keith in my previous job as an analyst, and he just told me that he has actually been with Boustead for 15 years. So that's a huge amount of experience with the company, and I'm sure he's the right man for us to probe more about the company. Now, without further ado, let's welcome Keith. Hi Keith, how are you today?
Hi Stanley, I'm good, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you for this invitation also to speak. First time on Facebook Live, so it should be an interesting experience.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you so much for joining us. If you guys have any question for Keith, just ask along on the comments tab, and we'll try to get him to answer as many questions as we can. Before we put the question to the floor, let's maybe talk about some of the current event happening with Boustead Singapore. Especially, I think a lot of people is interested about your current White Rock medical acquisition. Can you maybe talk a little bit about what is that about, and how does the management see it?
Well, you know that Boustead pretty much has been talking about acquisitions and trying to do something for the past decade, ever since the global financial crisis came and went. So for us, we've sort of reach a stage where obviously organic growth is a lot more difficult to achieve now that we are of a certain size. Mm-hmm. And so acquisitions and inorganic growth seem like the way to go. Now, of course, I think most people were always thinking that we would make an acquisition within one of our three divisions.
Yep.
And that's always been actually part of our direction. But in the past year and a half, we've started to open up our minds to the possibilities of acquiring in other areas, especially areas where there could be long-term prospects, a market that is underserved. And of course, this is where White Rock comes in. It's something that we basically have begun to look at. In fact, in terms of healthcare in general, I mean, as far as a year back, there were also other opportunities that came along. And in terms of management, there was a great interest, in fact, given the long-term prospects of healthcare, as well as the demographics of our aging populations, whether it's globally or here in Asia. Mm-hmm. So with White Rock, quite clear that it's a small acquisition, something at 19 million, mm-hmm. quite manageable, and certainly for us, it will be a fourth division, something that diversifies our way away from some of the more cyclical industries that we are in. I mean, if you talk about oil and gas and the construction industry here in Singapore, for example, those are cyclical in nature, right? So I think in terms of healthcare, clearly less cyclical, no matter whether or not the economy is doing well or badly. It's an area that clearly people need. Mm-hmm. And the focus on White Rock, I mean, if we look at White Rock specifically, there are three areas in which it is really focused. These are, the three areas are really rehabilitative care for the elderly. Usually it's cancer, not cancer, but cardiac or stroke patients. The other area, sleep therapy, which is in a way related because it's usually what they call a comorbidity, which is associated disease that comes along with people who suffer from cardiac or stroke. And then the third area is sports science, so rehabilitative in nature again, and also focus really on getting people back to be their normal selves in terms of mobility.
Right. Okay.
So it's a pretty underserved area at this point in time. White Rock is interesting in that it has an Asian platform, big presence here in Singapore. Malaysia and Thailand are other key markets that we are looking at in Asia. And of course, it's also serving through an associate company the whole of China.
Right.
So
okay.
that of course is a very important market for us as well.
Right. Okay. You talk about the management has always been looking to grow by not just organically but also through M&A. So is this deal sort of did they came to you, or you guys have I would say maybe an official investment team that search around Asia to look for good acquisition? How did that process work, and how did it lead to this deal?
Well, you're right. In most cases, of course, acquisition targets are brought by either brokers or banks who are the usual intermediaries. But in this particular case, I think if you saw the announcement, you have noticed that Goh Boon Siong, who is our audit committee chairman, is also the CEO of White Rock. He owns 1.88% of the company, a very small stake.
Right.
So you can see he's very much, even though he was a founder of the company, there were other big shareholders who put in the money, and his role was really then as a professional manager for the business.
Right.
So given his position, when the time came for basically really the divestment on White Rock's side of things, he came directly to us, and knowing that we had also the financial capability to make the acquisition and also to fund future growth that would be required for this business.
Right. Okay. And will Mr. Goh continue his tenure as the management, or you guys are putting in your own team after that?
He's definitely continuing. He's going to join us as the CEO of our acquired business, and he's also bringing his entire team along. Right. So we've got the good experience then of that entire team, and of course there would have been no intention to take over a business and try and run it ourselves. Yeah.
Okay, yeah, no problem. I think more and more of us are joining. Hey Grace, nice to see you again. You're here again. I think so. It more or less signified that Boustead is moving not say in a new direction, but it's more open to companies of the other industry in the future. Do you guys have maybe like a KPI of how many deals you need to do a year, or right now the M&A process is still quite ad hoc for Boustead?
Well, if you set KPIs for us, I think we would have failed miserably. There are far too many acquisition targets that we have looked at, and we've walked away from many of these deals simply because either you go in and then you do your in-depth due diligence and you find that something's not right in there. In cases like, for example, the oil and gas industries, where we've been searching over the last couple of years, ever since the downturn happened, there's always the question of, can this company survive a prolonged downturn? And usually we find it very difficult to answer that affirmatively yes. Right. If you were to acquire that company, you would survive a prolonged downturn.
Yep. Of course. That's interesting to know. Let's go into the, I wouldn't say traditional, but the key main businesses of Boustead, mainly the geospatial, your oil and energy business, and of course your real estate solution business. Can you maybe give a little bit background on each of these business, and just let the audience understand What are these three business unit really doing?
Sure. So before this, I mean, we had three core divisions, right? And the first being our energy-related engineering division. Primarily, most of the businesses are in oil and gas. And if you think about it, quite a fair bit of it is really in the downstream oil and gas sectors. We provide process heaters, waste heat recovery units to that sector. We also have process control systems, which we provide to the upstream oil and gas sector. And lastly, we have water and wastewater engineering, which is really for the energy sector in general. Moving on, we have the real estate solutions division, and that's very big here in Singapore. Of course, we're the market leader here in Singapore, from the private sector. We design and build industrial buildings for multinational clients. It has extended also to design, build, and lease, where we own the buildings and lease it also on a long-term basis. So we have a portfolio of properties today. And lately, of course, we've been adding more developments in overseas markets as well for that.
Right.
The final division is geospatial technology, and that's very much in terms of big data mapping analysis, and really smart maps, if you think about it, for the management of infrastructure, the deployment of smart cities. So all this requires an underlying mapping platform, and that's what we provide, including the services associated with it.
Right. That's very interesting. Like a wide range of businesses and solution. I think Grace have a question for you. Talking about, say, your real estate solution, or maybe the energy business, because they work on a project basis. Are you seeing improvement in projects on hand, on winning new contracts? Are you able to see, let's say in the next 1 to 3 years, are we expecting better times for Boustead, especially maybe in the oil and gas? We've seen that it hasn't been doing so well, not just for Boustead, of course, for the entire industry. Are you seeing some bright spot right now?
Okay, well, I'll start with really the real estate side first, Boustead Projects. I think when we look back, FY 2017, 140 million in contracts secured. FY 2018, the year just passed, we had 233 million in contracts secured. So you can see there's definitely been an improvement in this particular area. We're sort of riding on the fact that, that the Singapore government has put out many industry transformation maps, right? So essentially all of these industries eventually need to transform themselves. I think one of the key areas, of course, that's greatly talked about is automation, digitalization, Industry 4, really, right? So essentially, when it comes to even the industrial facilities that all of these industries are using, many times they have to build or they have to revamp their existing industrial facilities just to get to that kind of stage where they can transform their business. So it's not as simple as I just take my existing processes and then I change it to meet the new transformation roadmaps that have been laid out. They have to do quite a fair bit also in terms of infrastructure. Right. What we're seeing is that in the logistics sector, one of the first movers, actually, within the past year, we've picked up 4 contracts there. And 3 of them are, in fact, for very advanced type of logistics facilities. Right. Talking about the highest level of automation, robotics being introduced. And in a way, the 3 market leaders in the logistics space appointed us really because we have the necessary experience to build those type of facilities for them. So I would say that in terms of the outlook, it seems to be improving. I think even for industrial real estate as a whole, not just talking about what we are focused on, seems like there's a bottoming out right now and more contracts flowing through. Of course, JTC is also helping out because they've been putting out quite a number of tenders for very mega industrial projects. So in a way, more players then have a chance to participate.
Right. Okay. Before we go on to the oil and gas sector, maybe a follow-up question on the real estate solution. So for this maybe your current book order right now, do you have a split between how much of it is coming from government projects and how much of it is coming from the private sector?
By and large, actually, everything that we get is from the private sector.
Okay.
Yeah. So we've been starting in the past year actually to tender for government projects as well. We haven't been successful yet. Haven't that first project. So usually where we get the points in terms of the new tendering system is in terms of quality and of course the methods used, but we tend to lose points in terms of pricing. So it's a difficult balance at the moment, and until the point where we get that balance right, I think we will be trying obviously still to get government projects, but it may not be as easy.
Right, no problem. Yeah. Understand. Okay, maybe you can share a little bit about the energy side of things as well.
Sure. I think if we look at energy, of course, looking globally, oil and gas prices have now even touched a high of 80, recently come back down to 70 plus. We've looked at it, and we also feel that things are somewhat improving. It's not a very quick improvement, but certainly it's much better than a year ago. So a year ago, 40 million in contracts secured. In the past year, we are talking about 80 million in contracts secured. It's still not high enough for us, to be frank. But at least we're starting to see activities move again. Oil and gas clients who are willing now to make final investment decisions versus in the past just delay it further down the road. So I think from that perspective, we also feel slightly more confident on things.
Okay.
But that being said, we still have a very hard and long journey in terms of a full path to recovery.
Okay. But it seems that from both your comments, you are cautiously optimistic. Is that the right word to use?
Yeah, I think you would have noticed that change in tone. Which, what someone actually told me is like trying to read the Fed minutes for US interest rates.
Yeah. Okay, I think we have another question from the floor. Wong is asking for Boustead Project. Are you guys up against, he said, are you guys up against the big IT vendors for this type of digital transformation projects? I'm not quite sure what he means by the big IT vendors, but maybe you can talk a little bit about your competition. Who are they, and are they like really large guys or mainly firms of your same size?
I guess this is probably in reference to geospatial technology, right?
I think he was talking about, just now you're talking about the real estate where you have the government plan to do more digital transformation initiative, right? For this kind of new type of buildings, who are you actually competing with? Who has the capability of building all these, smart buildings?
Well, I guess because of the focus really on hard infrastructure here, we're really up against the likes still of people like Ascenders, Mapletree, who would be our biggest competitors. They are developers, but of course, with their government backing, they are able to put together quite good packages for clients. But having said that, I guess, when it comes to certain sectors such as aerospace, logistics, high-tech manufacturing, these are all places where we've built up a market leadership position. And so clearly, when it comes to also designing and building these type of facilities, a lot of it goes around the processes of our clients, and that's a very important part. We understand and are able to build around that. The other area, of course, is in the fact that not only does it have to be built around their processes, but in a lot of cases, multinationals are now looking to go greener, right? So Green Mark Platinum buildings are actually a space where we are the market leader as well.
Okay.
18% of all the new built industrial buildings that are Green Mark Platinum have been built by us.
Oh, okay. That's interesting statistics.
Yeah.
Okay. I do have a question for your energy business, like more on a longer term, a slightly longer term. We are seeing that there's a slow but kind of a sure trend moving away from oil and gas energy supplies, like say the automotive industry is moving more into battery technology, or more and more renewable energy now is coming up. Would that impact your energy business, given that you are still serving the oil and gas industry predominantly? Are you able to use your solution to suit other energy source like renewables or batteries?
I guess, in this particular space, number one, of course, the combustion engine, petrol engines, is very hard to replace overnight. So clearly, even with the advent of electric cars, right, it'll take some time, obviously, for that transformation to come through. And I think also increasingly we have to differentiate really that the oil and gas industries is no longer really a single industry, but the fact is that you have oil and you have gas. And how gas is important is really, we feel, as an intermediate solution between oil and renewables, because you're not going to reach even a stage where renewables makes up most of the energy supply, for example, in a short frame of time. So gas being not exactly the cleanest, but somewhat cleaner than oil, right? Is going to have a long runway. We're talking about easily 20 to 50 years, okay? The other thing is that a lot of people forget that our power plants, which are supplying that eventually that electricity to electric cars, right? Most of the cleaner power plants are really actually gas-fired. So gas is going to be here also for a very long time, okay? So we find that, of course, our heaters, they have been used for both oil as well as gas. And so a lot more deployments in terms of the future, in terms of gas processing plants, LNG plants, will be there in terms of providing the heaters for gas distillation. The other thing is that our waste heat recovery units also are very important in this whole aspect of, I hate to use the word greenifying the oil industries, okay, which is an extremely pollutive industry by itself. But the fact is that we are helping to at least reduce the carbon footprint in a way. The idea really that you are recycling, reusing waste heat, waste gases, you're not flaring it off into the environment. These are aspects of what the waste heat recovery units do. And they also increase the efficiency of gas turbines by double the amount. So it's a very significant uplift in terms of efficiency there. Yeah, so these are very important to us. That being said, yes, in time, obviously, we are going to try and see whether our products can be pushed out to other industries. There are industries who do use both heaters as well as waste heat recovery units, but not as big a way as the oil and gas industries.
Right. Okay. So there's probably still ways for you guys to sort of diversify away your revenue stream away from just oil dependent in that sense. Right.
That's right.
Okay, I think let's move on to your geospatial business. I think many of us, including myself, we sort of see your geospatial business like the crown jewel of Boustead Singapore, right? It's always consistent, always growing, money making, and but over the years, it sort of struck me as it's still predominantly very much focused in the Australasia region. What is the plan? Are you guys able to expand beyond that? Your distribution rights with the company. Can you maybe talk a little bit about that? Are you able to scale this business up significantly?
We've attempted to in the past. I would say that in order to broaden our exclusive distribution network, we would have to buy over another exclusive distributor of S3 technology in another country.
Right.
So that would be the only way, given that all the countries have been given out already.
Right. Okay.
We attempted to in the past, but you know, this kind of thing, it actually requires, first of all, a blessing from our principal in the US, S3 itself. And we got those blessings, in fact. But we couldn't agree finally on the valuation. So you could say that the sellers then in our perspective, they were asking for far too much.
Oh, okay.
For those businesses. So yeah, in the end, we didn't take on new territories or try to acquire new territories. Right now, how we are looking at trying to expand the business, and it's going to be a slow process, is really there are certain revenue streams that perhaps we see going out. So a lot of people obviously are using big data to analyze and then sell solutions that make money from it, right?
Yep.
We're also going down that path where we're trying to find revenue streams that we can monetize ourselves, given that we have some data. I'm not saying that we have a lot of data, but we do have some data within our grasp. Some data can be bought, and what we're trying to do then is to provide a solution that somebody can buy without having to go through the process then of building their own system or solution. So we're using the S3 platform. We produce the solution for them. We gather the data, and so we analyze, and then we sell them that part of it.
Right.
Rather than they buy the S3 platform and do it themselves.
Okay, interesting. And sort of, I guess, because given that you are the exclusive distributor to S3, and a lot of your potential and your revenue is coming and very dependent on what S3 is doing. Do you see a threat? What I'm seeing is, a lot of the technology is moving very fast in terms of development, and also is sort of becoming democratized. Like you're talking about satellites in the past is a huge satellite, but now they have a CubeSat where almost anyone, not anyone, but generally speaking, most people are able to send up satellites now. And when you're talking about your geospatial technology on say traffic mapping, I don't know if Waze or Google, they are using X3 at the background, but we see more and more of this company, both large and small startups, that is disrupting this kind of industry. Does that bother you? Is that a thing that investors should be worried about?
I mean, you're right. Technological disruption at this point in time is at it's probably its highest in history, right? But we are actually pretty happy with the situation at the moment because of the fact that these disruptions, a lot of them are riding really on the need for an underlying mapping platform. So like you said, Waze, right? Waze actually rides on the S3 platform, which is in the background.
Right.
We're talking about quite a number of startups around the world as well as here in Singapore where they are also increasingly tapping on the Esri platform. Many of them, of course, being startups, right? They try to tap on what's free. But when they use Google Maps, for example, what they find is that the information is all gathered by Google and it tends not to be verified, right? Because it's free information again. Okay. So that platform also limits their ability to do analysis. It doesn't give them all the tools that they need. Right. So what we're finding really is that when it comes to the need for more robust tools and to do more things, then a lot of companies have turned to Esri. And of course, the government agencies, most of them are using Esri really because it's always stayed at the forefront in terms of technological development. Now, we feel that with the advent of smart cities, with the advent of Internet of Things, and really big data, actually, we've been doing the mapping for all of these for the last 40 years. It's just that within the last few years, you can say that things have really matured in terms of this particular area. So that helps our business in the long run, obviously.
Right. Okay. That's interesting to know. Of course, as a consumer standpoint, when we see new startup coming with good mapping technology, we always thought, this is gonna disrupt your business. But actually, it's an interesting point that you thought. You mentioned that a lot of the startup is actually using the S3 platform, so that's very good to know. Yep. On that note, right, because you have spin off your real estate solution Boustead Project, is it not surprising maybe in the future that we can expect maybe you guys will spin off, say, the geospatial business and also the energy business? Is that something you guys will consider?
Yeah, to be frank, we've not shied away from looking at that before. In fact, when Boustead, when basically our energy division had been doing very well, there had been opportunities at that point in time either to do a separate kind of listing on its own or also for it to be divested in totality at very good valuations back then. Of course, we didn't have the foresight to know how deep this recession would be. Otherwise, maybe we have made certain moves, right? But anyway, the thing is that with any spin-off of a division, I think the key thing is really, has it reached a critical mass? Could it stand on its own without having Boustead Singapore in terms of a need to finance any future growth, without having to require our strategic direction in many ways. Okay. So far, of course, only Boustead Projects has met that criteria. Not saying that others won't, but I think they would still have to build up their business to a larger scale in order for us to then consider seriously to do a spin-off of these divisions.
Okay. Interesting. Maybe we can close that off with some discussion on Boustead Project. Boustead Project, of course, now from your annual report, you talk about the three main type of business for Boustead Project. Your build and design, your leasing, and of course some strategic partnership or investment. Of course, now it's still the design and build that is the main bulk of your revenue stream. But will we see you guys moving more and more towards just owning the property outright and having a leasing model for your future projects? Is it something that you are seriously on building up your leasing portfolio?
Well, I guess, of course, design and build has always been our bread and butter. I don't think we'll ever get away from that in terms of, at least here in Singapore. But if we had a choice with would still love to do more in terms of development and leasing. Of course, quite a fair bit of this is really up to our clients, right? Because it's their global mandate on whether they own their own facilities or lease facilities. So that opportunity is there for development and leasing. We would rather take that option because it comes with the recurring income for the long term. So that would be our aim. Now, overseas markets, really 3 overseas markets at this point in time, which is Malaysia, Vietnam, and potentially Indonesia.
Right.
Why I've skipped China is because China is very difficult a market to basically do any of these things. But with the other 3 overseas markets, we find that trying to do just pure design and build services is much more difficult. Clearly because the clients themselves want a proposition where you have the land, you are able to design and build for them, and the location has to be right.
Right.
We've come across, the situation where we can do the design and build for them quite easily, but clearly we don't have the land. So we've been looking very actively across these 3 markets for a land bank that would be suitable, one which is in a good location, and one which really meets the target industries that we are out after. Quite a fair bit of it, of course, is right now focused on logistics type of hubs, networks. So land in that space, and we have been looking for land partners as well. So these land partners, they typically, of course, have the land, but they don't have the design and build expertise.
Right.
Also don't have the clients, so that's where we come in.
Okay. That's interesting of how you guys have a unique position on making everything work. But I think Edmund brought out a nice point, saying that because you guys are focused so much on the design and build of a building, when the company want to lease it from you guys, does it include a risk for you because it's all designed for their purpose, and if their business doesn't take off and they have to move out, is that a risk for you to have a white elephant, or you are quite easily you can convert that to another purpose properties?
Yeah, that's a fair question. I think when it comes to what we do, we have to basically go through a very in-depth due diligence process also on our clients. And I mean, I'll give you an example. During the global financial crisis, just before that, we actually turned away half of all the opportunities that we were seeing because we felt that after doing the due diligence on the clients, their balance sheet was not strong enough. And clearly even their profitability at that time also wasn't showing that they could be very good paymasters. So that part of it is something that we always look at. Secondly, when it comes to the clients who come under this kind of proposition, leasing proposition, we always ask for a corporate guarantee from the parent company.
Right. Okay.
So that's supposed to cover really the duration, 10 years or more of rental. So if they pull out halfway, right, this corporate guarantee, we have something to seize upon. The third thing that we do is, and I think this goes against conventional thinking, we don't do any facilities usually for monopolies. You think monopoly, okay, good business, right? By right, they should be there for a long time. But the reality is, what happens if they pull out of Singapore? Then there's no competitor who could take over the space very easily.
True.
So at least with a competitor, they could likely take over the space with minimal disruption, as well as minimal works that we have to do to the existing facility. And the very last thing that we typically do is in terms of the structural design, we try to put in some flexibility. That, of course, you can't put in total flexibilities because certain things of the structure cannot be changed. Right. But some flexibility, then you could adapt the building to a new use, to a new industry if need be.
Okay, that's very reassuring to know. I think let's have the last question. I think Mr. Lee is asking the last question. Because of your leasing business, would you consider, once you have a sizable portfolio, even to do a Boustead REIT, or maybe some of your properties you're open to leasing it now, or maybe midterm of your lease you decided to spin it off and sell it to another REIT? Maybe talk about what the management view on this kind of issue.
I guess we were one of the first movers, right, when it came to design build lease. So we had actually quite a number of properties early on, and then we were selling 1 to 2 a year. We had to build up Maple Tree Logistics Trust so they could list, and a few other competitors, of course, in the REIT market. And so clearly the benefit, the end benefit, was going to these guys eventually.
Yeah.
So around the financial crisis period, we said, okay, let's stop benefiting these other parties. Why don't we do things ourselves, unlock things ourselves? And hence the recent, at least in the past decade, holding on to all of these properties and trying to build up a sizable portfolio. The intention really to put it into, ideally, either you have a listed REIT or a property trust that's not listed.
Yep.
That can basically, in such an instance, we are a strong sponsor to these REITs or trusts. We also take a controlling stake in it, so that we control the direction of it. We will be part of the manager then of the properties. But of course, in a REIT case, you get the tax incentives, right?
Yeah.
You get efficient structure, whereas in the other cases that we've looked at, you don't get that. So it's a fine balance at the moment. We haven't yet reached the critical mass to do it. Okay. Yet we have been pretty aggressive in picking up new deals over the past few years. So we're talking about our portfolio size really almost doubling in terms of the value, once we include also all our joint venture partners and their stakes in it. So we've been able to do that part of it. But the final move, whether to do it a REIT or private property trust, that part of it we haven't yet decided. The other thing I could probably say is that we probably wouldn't sell out totally to another REIT or third party competitor or things like that. Yeah.
Okay.
So we have no intention to let them enjoy those benefits.
That's extremely good to know for all the Boustead shareholders. Thank you so much for your time, Keith. It has been a really insightful interview, and I guess our takeaway is really, Boustead is trying to form itself to be able to continue to grow for the future, and that really would not just include your three core businesses, and you guys are really open to other new businesses coming into the fold. And I'm really excited to see your development, and I wish you all the best, Keith. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yep. See you.
Thank
see
you
you
to
soon.
everyone else who has also listened in.
Thank you. See you guys.
Okay, thank you.